I was 32 when I realized my life was built on lies. For 3.5 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage with Sophia. We shared dreams, a beautiful home, and what I believed was unbreakable trust. Then came the day I discovered those text messages. Instead of confronting her, I made a decision that shocked everyone who knew us. I quietly packed my things and disappeared from her life. I found peace in a new city, until exactly 1 year later, when my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Take a second to hit like and subscribe if you want more stories about finding strength after betrayal. My journey with Sophia began at a tech conference in Seattle 6 years ago. I was presenting a new software development framework while she was representing her marketing firm. Our eyes met across the crowded exhibition hall, and something just clicked. She had this captivating smile that made the corners of her eyes crinkle slightly, and dark curly hair that bounced when she laughed. After my presentation, she approached with intelligent questions that showed she actually understood the technical aspects of my work. We ended up talking until the venue staff asked us to leave. Our first official date was at Analog Coffee on Capitol Hill. I remember how the late afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, highlighting the gold flecks in her hazel eyes as she told me about growing up in Portland with 4 siblings. We shared a mutual love for hiking the Pacific Northwest trails, obscure indie films, and spicy Thai food. I told her about my childhood in Michigan and my dream of starting my own tech company someday. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Sophia was different from anyone I had dated before. She was ambitious, yet kind, challenging, yet supportive. When I was offered a position at a more innovative company but hesitated because of the risk, she encouraged me to take the leap. She believed in me more than I believed in myself. 8 months into dating, we decided to move in together. We found a small apartment with a view of Lake Union and spent weekends hunting for quirky furniture at vintage shops. Living together felt effortless. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. She was spontaneous while I was a planner. I was quiet and introspective. She was outgoing and vivacious. Together, we seemed to create this perfect balance. The proposal happened during a sunrise hike on Mount Rainier. I had carried the ring in my pocket, terrified of losing it. When we reached the summit and the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in pink and gold, I asked her to be my wife. She cried and said yes. And in that moment, I truly believed we would spend the rest of our lives together. Our wedding was small, but perfect. We rented a rustic lodge near Snoqualmie Falls and invited only close friends and family. Sophia wore a simple white dress that made her look like she had stepped out of a dream. We wrote our own vows, promising honesty, fidelity, and lifelong partnership. My voice cracked when I promised to always be her safe harbor. Her eyes shimmered with tears when she promised to choose me every day for the rest of our lives. For our honeymoon, we drove through the Colorado mountains, staying in small towns and hiking lesser-known trails. In Telluride, we spent an entire day exploring an abandoned silver mine. In Ouray, we soaked in natural hot springs under the stars and talked about our future children. We decided we wanted 2, hopefully a boy and a girl. We even discussed potential names. The first year of our marriage was pure bliss. We established weekend traditions like Sunday morning pancakes and afternoon walks around Green Lake. We hosted dinner parties for our growing circle of friends and became known as the couple that everyone wanted to be around. Sophia advanced in her marketing career while I thrived in my software development role. We saved diligently, and within 18 months of marriage, we purchased our first home in a quiet Seattle suburb. House hunting had been an adventure in itself. We viewed 27 properties before finding a craftsman-style home with a wraparound porch and maple trees in the yard. The neighborhood had excellent schools, which we noted for our future children. We painted each room together, arguing good-naturedly about color choices. We planted a vegetable garden and bought a grill for summer barbecues. We truly built a life together, brick by brick, day by day. Our neighbors, the Andersons, quickly became good friends. Robert worked in healthcare, and his wife Lisa was a teacher. We had them over for dinner regularly, and they introduced us to other couples in the area. We formed a tight-knit social circle, going camping together in the summer, and having holiday parties in the winter. Sophia and I seemed to be growing together stronger with each passing month. Then, around our third anniversary, subtle changes began to appear. Sophia started working later than usual. At first it was once a week, then twice, then nearly every day. She mentioned a big new client that required extra attention. She began attending networking events and coming home with stories about new professional contacts. One name that kept coming up was Jackson, a creative director at a partner agency. Our physical intimacy decreased gradually. Where we once could not keep our hands off each other, weeks would now pass without meaningful connection. When I tried to initiate, she was too tired or had an early morning meeting. When I asked if everything was okay, she assured me it was just work stress and temporary. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and she guarded it carefully. She would take calls in another room or step outside to talk. When she received texts late at night, she would angle her screen away from me. Sometimes I would wake up at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty, only to discover her in the living room typing on her phone. When I asked, she said she was just catching up on work emails because she could not sleep. I tried to be understanding. I knew her career was important to her, and I wanted to be a supportive husband. But a growing unease began to settle in my stomach. The woman I married was becoming a stranger bit by bit, day by day. The turning point came at our friend David's 40th birthday party. Sophia spent most of the evening talking with a tall, well-dressed man in the corner. Their conversation seemed intense, with occasional bursts of intimate laughter. When I approached, she introduced him as Jackson, her coworker. His handshake was firm. His smile did not reach his eyes. Throughout the evening, I noticed their subtle touches, the way they leaned in when speaking to each other, how their eyes lingered. When I suggested we head home early, Sophia seemed annoyed, but agreed. During our silent car ride home, I felt a cold weight settling in my chest. The discovery happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I had come home early from work with a migraine and was lying down in our darkened bedroom. Sophia did not know I was home. Her phone was on the nightstand charging. It chimed with an incoming message, and the screen lit up the dim room. Without thinking, I glanced over. The preview showed a message from Jackson. "I can still taste you from last night. When can I see you again?" My body went cold. With shaking hands, I picked up her phone. It was unlocked. I never snooped before, but in that moment I needed to know the truth. I opened her messages with Jackson. There were hundreds of them dating back 7 months. Explicit descriptions of their encounters. Complaints about me and our marriage. Plans for their next meeting. Photos I can never unsee. I scrolled through their history, each message a knife in my heart. They had been meeting during her late nights at work, during her business trips, sometimes even while I was at weekend coding workshops. There were hotel receipts in her email, restaurant charges on our joint credit card that she had explained as client meetings. 7 months. 7 months of lying to my face every day. 7 months of me believing we were just going through a rough patch. 7 months of me trying harder to be a better husband while she was building a relationship with someone else. I sat on our bed for hours, the phone in my hand, messages of betrayal illuminating my face. I felt physically ill, my stomach churning, my head pounding worse than before. But beyond the physical pain was something deeper, a fundamental shift in my understanding of reality. The life I thought I had was a mirage. The woman I loved had become someone I did not recognize. In that moment, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would not confront her. I would not scream or cry or beg for explanations. I would simply leave. That night I lay awake beside Sophia, studying her sleeping face in the darkness, wondering how someone so familiar could be such a stranger. The next morning I kissed her goodbye as she left for work, just like any other day. But as soon as her car turned the corner, I began preparing for my exit. First, I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I transferred exactly half of our savings, leaving her portion untouched. I contacted my company about remote work possibilities and was relieved when they approved my request to relocate to the Austin office. I researched apartments online and secured a short-term lease in the South Congress neighborhood, paying the deposit from my new account. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained a perfect facade. I smiled at breakfast. I asked about her day. I pretended I did not know about Jackson. I even made love to her one last time, holding back tears, as I memorized the curves of her body, knowing it would be the final time. Meanwhile, I gathered essential documents and secretly packed items of sentimental value. My grandparents' wedding photo, the journal I had kept since college, the vintage watch my father gave me. I mailed several boxes to a storage facility in Austin, under the guise of donating old clothes to charity. Each night I battled conflicting emotions. I still loved the woman I thought Sophia was, but that woman did not exist. I cycled through anger, imagining confronting her and Jackson. Then came waves of grief for the future we had planned. Sometimes a strange sense of liberation washed over me at the thought of starting fresh. Other times, paralyzing fear of the unknown kept me awake until dawn. I wrote and rewrote my goodbye letter dozens of times. In the end, I kept it simple. Sophia, I know about Jackson. I have known for 2 weeks. I am not angry anymore, just sad that what we had was not enough. I have taken only what is mine. The house is yours to keep or sell. Please do not try to contact me. I wish you happiness. Max, I timed my departure carefully. Sophia mentioned an overnight marketing retreat in Portland, a lie I now recognized as likely another night with Jackson. Once she left that Friday morning, I called a moving service to collect the few furniture pieces I had decided to take. My home office desk that I had built myself, a reading chair my mother had given me, a small bookcase. As the movers loaded my minimal belongings into their truck, I walked through our home one final time. I touched the walls we had painted together. I stood in the nursery we had planned to convert when we had our first child. I walked through our garden, where the tomato plants were just beginning to fruit. In the kitchen, I placed my wedding ring on the counter alongside my letter. I took off my house key and placed it beside them. The sound of metal against granite seemed to echo in the empty house. I looked at the refrigerator still covered with our photos and memories. The trip to Vancouver, the Christmas with both our families, our first anniversary celebration. I left them all untouched. The drive away from Seattle was both the hardest and easiest thing I had ever done. Through the rearview mirror, I watched our home shrink and disappear. 1,800 miles stretched between my past and future. With each state line I crossed, I felt the distance growing, not just in miles, but in possibility. Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, New Mexico, and finally Texas. My first weeks in Austin were a blur of temporary accommodations and job orientation. I found a one-bedroom apartment in a modern building with a rooftop pool and a view of the city skyline. It was nothing like our cozy craftsman home, and that was exactly what I needed. No memories lurked in these sleek, impersonal corners. I immersed myself in work, volunteering for every project available. I stayed late at the office not because I was building a relationship with someone else, but because I could not bear the silence of my new apartment. My colleagues invited me to happy hours and weekend activities. I accepted every invitation, determined to build connections in my new city. 6 weeks after my departure, divorce papers arrived via certified mail. Sophia had not contested anything. She kept the house and her retirement accounts. I kept my savings and investments. A clean break, legally documented in black and white. I signed the papers the same day and returned them immediately. No negotiation needed when there was nothing left to say. She tried to reach me multiple times. Calls from unknown numbers that I let go to voicemail. Emails with subject lines that ranged from apologetic to angry. I deleted them all unread. Our mutual friends sent messages expressing confusion and concern. To them, I sent brief replies, assuring them I was fine, but needed space. I did not tell them about the affair. Despite everything, I did not want to destroy the image they had of Sophia. That felt like a cruelty I could not justify even after her betrayal. Gradually, I established new routines. Sunday mornings, I hiked the Barton Creek Greenbelt. Wednesday evenings, I joined a rock climbing group at a local gym. Friday nights, I explored Austin music venues, letting the vibrations of live bands drown out my thoughts. I found a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma who helped me process my grief without becoming bitter. Dating again proved challenging. The first woman I had coffee with reminded me too much of Sophia, and I never called her back. The second seemed wonderful until she mentioned she remained friends with all her exes, which triggered all my insecurities. The third was perfect on paper, but there was simply no chemistry. I decided to take a break from dating and focus on rebuilding myself. Slowly and visibly at first, healing began to take root. I made genuine friends who knew me only as Max from Michigan who worked in software and enjoyed hiking not as the guy whose wife cheated on him. I bought a mountain bike and explored the hill country on weekends. I took cooking classes and learned to make authentic Texas barbecue. I even adopted a rescue dog, a three-legged Australian Shepherd mix I named Tripod, who became my loyal companion. By the time winter turned to spring, I had created a life I genuinely enjoyed. My apartment now felt like home decorated with local art and filled with books. I had been promoted at work for my contributions to a major project. I had friends who checked in regularly and included me in their lives. The raw wound of betrayal had scarred over. I still thought about Sophia, but the thoughts no longer paralyzed me. I was against all odds happy again. And then exactly 1 year to the day since I had left Seattle, everything changed again. I was returning from walking Tripod when I noticed a familiar silver Audi parked in the visitor section of my apartment complex. My heart stuttered in my chest. I knew that car. I had helped choose it. I had changed its oil every 3 months. I had made love to Sophia in its back seat during a rainstorm when we could not wait to get home. For a moment I considered turning around, taking Tripod for an extra long walk, pretending I had not seen the car or the woman leaning against it, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her eyes, despite the cloudy day. But I had been running for a year. Perhaps it was time to stand still. As I approached, Sophia pushed herself away from the car and removed her sunglasses. She looked both exactly the same and completely different. Her dark curls were shorter, now barely reaching her shoulders. She had lost weight, her cheekbones more prominent than I remembered. She wore a simple blue dress I did not recognize. But her eyes, those hazel eyes with golden flecks, remained unchanged. Tripod growled softly beside me, sensing my tension. I placed a reassuring hand on his head. Sophia stared at the dog, then at me. Uncertainty written across her face. I found my voice first. Not the angry shout I once imagined, not the tearful whisper I had feared, but a calm, neutral greeting. I did not invite her up to my apartment. Instead, I suggested a cafe 2 blocks away. Public, neutral, safe. We walked in silence. Sophia tried to make small talk about my dog, about Austin, about the weather. I responded with short, polite answers. The conversation felt surreal, like strangers performing a scene from a play about people who once knew each other intimately. At the cafe, we sat at an outdoor table. I ordered black coffee. She ordered a latte with almond milk, just like she always had. I asked the question that had been burning inside me since I saw her car. "How did you find me?" She explained that a mutual friend had posted a photo of a music festival in Austin. I was visible in the background arm, around a woman I had been dating briefly. Sophia had enlarged the image, confirmed it was me, and hired a private investigator to locate my address. The knowledge that she had gone to such lengths was both unsettling and oddly flattering. We sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes before the dam finally broke. Sophia began to cry, mascara tracking down her cheeks in thin black rivers. Between sobs, her story poured out. The affair with Jackson had been physical, not emotional, she claimed. She had been flattered by his attention, excited by the danger, addicted to the thrill of secrecy. She never planned to leave me for him. In her mind, she had compartmentalized our marriage from her infidelity, never allowing herself to see how one destroyed the other. When she returned from her trip to Portland and found me gone, she had collapsed on the kitchen floor. My letter and wedding ring clutched in her hand. She called Jackson expecting comfort. Instead, he ended their relationship, suddenly concerned about the messiness of dating a woman whose husband had just left her. Our friends had been shocked by my disappearance. Some blamed her, immediately suspecting the truth. Others blamed me for abandoning her without explanation. The divide created lasting fractures in our social circle. She lost friendships. Her professional reputation suffered when rumors of her affair with Jackson spread through industry circles. She had kept our house for 6 months before selling it, unable to bear the emptiness and memories. She moved to a downtown apartment and threw herself into work. Eventually, she started therapy, unpacking her patterns of self-sabotage and fear of genuine intimacy. I listened without interrupting. The woman across from me was laying herself bare, confessing sins I already knew, seeking an absolution I was not sure I could give. When she finished speaking, she reached across the table for my hand. I did not pull away, but I did not hold hers either. My hand lay passive under her touch. Then came her request: a second chance. A fresh start. She had changed, she insisted. She understood now what she had thrown away. She would spend the rest of her life rebuilding trust if I would only give her the opportunity. She still loved me. She always had, even during her betrayal. I looked at this woman who had once been the center of my universe. I searched my heart for the love that had once consumed me. I found only echoes, distant and fading. In its place was something unexpected: compassion without attachment. My response was kind, but unwavering. I told her I had forgiven her months ago, not for her benefit but for my own peace. I explained how her betrayal had forced me to rebuild myself from the foundation up. I was a different person now. We both were. The people who had made those wedding vows no longer existed. Her expression shifted from hope to disbelief to anger. How could I throw away 3.5 years based on one mistake? Did I not believe people could change? Had I ever really loved her? If I could walk away so completely? I did not rise to the bait. Instead, I acknowledged that my method of leaving had been extreme. I apologized for the pain my disappearance must have caused. But I did not apologize for protecting myself in the only way that felt possible at the time. As we talked, I noticed a small silver key on her keychain. She had kept her key to our old house, even after selling it, a talisman of what she had lost. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own keychain. I still carried my old house key too, not as a talisman, but as a reminder of a lesson learned at great cost. I removed the key and placed it on the table between us, a symbolic return of the last piece of our shared past. She stared at it for a long moment before picking it up and adding it to her keychain alongside her own. Past and present merged in metal. She made one final attempt to change my mind. She spoke of our history, our inside jokes, our shared dreams. She reminded me of how perfectly we had fit together, how rare that kind of connection was. She listed all the changes she had made, the work she had done on herself. Her voice took on an edge of desperation that made my heart ache with pity, not longing. I paid for our coffees and stood to leave. She grabbed my wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. She asked if I was seeing someone else. If that was the real reason I would not consider reconciliation, I told her the truth. I had dated casually, but had not found a connection that felt right. My refusal had nothing to do with another woman. It had everything to do with the man I had become, a man who now understood that self-respect was not negotiable. Her final words were tinged with bitterness. Everyone makes mistakes. Her mistake was getting caught. My mistake was throwing away something that could have been fixed. Maybe she was right, I acknowledged. But I would rather live with the consequences of my choice than wonder when the next betrayal would come. As I walked away, she called my name one last time. When I turned, she was holding out her phone. One picture. Us on our wedding day, faces pressed together, deliriously happy. For a moment I was transported back to that day, to that feeling of absolute certainty. "Thank you for the memories," I said. I meant it sincerely. And then I walked away back toward my apartment, my dog, and the life I had built from the ashes of betrayal. That night, after Sophia drove away, I sat on my balcony watching the Austin skyline illuminate the darkness. I expected to feel upset to have old wounds reopened. Instead, I felt an unexpected lightness. The confrontation I had avoided for so long had finally happened, and I had emerged intact, even strengthened. The next morning, I called my therapist to process the encounter. She helped me recognize that my calm response to Sophia indicated healing I had not fully acknowledged. The anger and hurt that once defined my daily existence had transformed into something else: acceptance and growth. In the weeks that followed, I reflected on my journey since leaving Seattle. The decision to disappear had been born of shock and self-preservation. It might not have been the most mature response, but it had been necessary for me at that moment. Sometimes the most important boundaries are the ones we set when we feel we have nothing left. My career continued to flourish. I was offered a leadership position developing new software solutions for healthcare systems. My apartment no longer felt temporary, but it had become a true home filled with books, music, and the occasional muddy paw prints from Tripod. 3 months after Sophia found me, I met Amanda at a neighborhood bookstore. She was a pediatric surgeon, with kind eyes and a quick wit, who loved hiking almost as much as I did. Our relationship developed slowly, deliberately. I was transparent about my past, including my marriage and how it ended. She shared her own stories of heartbreak and healing. With Amanda, I learned that trust can be rebuilt, but it looks different the second time around. It becomes a choice rather than a default. A deliberate action rather than a passive state. We chose to trust each other daily, to communicate honestly about fears and insecurities. We created a relationship based on transparency that my marriage had lacked. The greatest lesson from my experience was understanding that sometimes walking away is not an act of weakness, but of tremendous courage. Society often celebrates those who stay and fight, who work through problems, who forgive without limit. But there is also strength in recognizing when a situation has become harmful, when the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to leave. I learned that closure does not always come from confrontation or explanation. Sometimes it comes from within, from the quiet acceptance that some questions will remain unanswered, some wounds will leave scars, and that is okay. Life continues. Growth happens. New chapters begin. Most importantly, I discovered that betrayal does not define you unless you allow it to. It can embitter you or empower you. It can close you off or open you to deeper connections built on honest foundations. The choice is yours. Today, my life looks nothing like what I had planned when I said those wedding vows to Sophia. It is not better or worse, just profoundly different. I carry the lessons of my past without being weighed down by them. I have learned to hold relationships lightly enough to enjoy them fully, but not so tightly that I lose myself within them. Have you ever had to walk away from something that was destroying you, even when others might not understand? Did you find strength in that difficult choice? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more reflections on finding your way through life-changing moments. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to quietly close the door on what hurts you and open a new one to possibilities you never imagined.